Disclosure, the Ant-Man movies are not my favorites. None of them are even very consequential to this universe or this franchise. But I've always considered them to be fun. Turn your brain off, have some laughs, palate cleansers, and sort of a break from the huge galaxy-wide blockbusters like the Avengers. That being said, I think this one is my favorite of the three. Like and subscribe if you haven't, and hit the notification bell. If you're new, check out the rest of the channel, and let me know what you think. Let's dive into Ant-Man and the Wasp. Let's just start out with my biggest complaint of this film, as well as with the predecessor and its follow-up, which is Peyton Reed. The dude has to be the most mediocre director working in this franchise, at least for now. The past couple years, they've been hiring some questionable talent, to say the least. His films just have no style at all, no unique flavor. He really is just someone to fill a spot. You just plug and place. And I don't mean that as a slight against him. I really don't. But it's just the truth. Say what you want about the rest of the MCU feeling very similar. And some of that is true. There are many of these movies and shows that feel like they're cut from the same cloth. But when you get films like Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Ragnarok, Homecoming, the list goes on. All of these feel like reflections of their respective directors. You don't get that with any of these Ant-Man movies. That is the one aspect that carried over from the first film that was not improved upon. Everything else, though, elevated. I think the plot, though a little convoluted at times, is better. The action is way more creative and engaging, and the villain is 1,000 times more interesting and compelling. This movie all around is just better than the first, in my opinion. Ghost is my favorite part of this film. Yellow Jacket was just sort of your stereotypical lackluster MCU villain who really is just a mirror of the film's hero. And despite Corey Stoll's dedicated performance, he just wasn't very engaging. Ghost is. She holds this deep hatred toward Hank Pym because of what he did to her father and her family, and how all of that led to the situation that she's in now. She's not a villain, not really. She's just a person angry about the unfortunate cards that she was dealt and how the world forgot about her. She's been used by the government for Black Ops missions, and now she's in a spot where her powers have become so debilitating that she can no longer control them. Her body is just constantly being torn apart at a molecular level, and it's to the point where it may finally just destroy her. She's a very well written character. You understand her pain and her struggle as well as her goals. But you also understand that while Hank Pym may have been the catalyst for her current circumstance, that doesn't mean he is necessarily the reason that her life has fallen into complete shambles. Which is why I love at the end that our heroes and villains come to find some common ground and are able to put their differences aside. It's a refreshing conclusion to one of these films or shows, especially in this era where it seemed like every new villain was just instantly being killed off at the end of each project. She's a good villain. I love her power set, and I'm excited to see her return in the Thunderbolts film. As for our heroes, they're great. Of the two of them, I think Wasp is definitely the standout. Rudd isn't bad. He's always good as Ant-Man. He's funny when he needs to be, he's serious when he needs to be, and he even gets some fun action sequences. The issue with Rudd, though, is that he's not the caliber of actor that can bring a lot of emotional weight to a role. Thankfully, Ant-Man doesn't require him to do that very often. When it does get a little shaky at times, but I'm able to brush past it. But Lily as Wasp is fantastic. Her suit is awesome, the choreography dedicated to her character is great, and her sequences are so enjoyable. I love how there is a stark contrast between these characters. Ant-Man knows how to fight, obviously, but you can tell Hope is way more experienced and has had way more training in hand-to-hand combat. She just absolutely dismantles any combatants that she comes in contact with, whereas Scott usually is just hilariously bumbling his way through every situation while also getting some good licks in. I enjoy how their relationship has progressed as well. It's complicated, like everyone's relationship. They're in a break because of how Scott screwed up going to Germany, and I enjoy that they didn't just brush past that fact. They built it into this narrative, and it's good. The returning cast is good. Douglas, Pena, everyone. They all serve a purpose to the story at some point. They all get moments to shine. Fishburne was a decent addition. He doesn't really get a ton to do besides just exposing a couple details on how the crew can rescue Janet, but he's fine for the character they ask him to play. I love Walton Goggins, so it's always great seeing him pop up in things. Pfeiffer is really only in the final act, but she's good. It was cool watching her make a return to the superhero genre. I liked how they utilized her time spent all the years in the quantum realm as a resolution for Ghost's dilemma. It was a cool way to tie the finale together. Seeing a bit more of the quantum realm was cool. I always enjoy when these films get weird, and it definitely gets weird in the final act when Douglas goes down there, so that was fun to see. But my favorite part of this whole movie is the action. I thought the first Ant-Man did a really good job at utilizing Ant-Man's power set, but the sequel does even better. It goes bigger and way more fun. There are so many cool action sequences. Wasp taking on Sonny's goons inside the kitchen, the Hello Kitty Pez dispenser knocking bikers to the pavement, Scott using a flatbed as sort of like a skateboard. The list just goes on. I just think this film utilized the shrinking and growing technology in more creative and enjoyable ways. And the effects that go along with those are really good, considering how bad some of the CGI has been in the MCU lately. It was a delight to see good, refined effects again. As I said up top, this movie is essentially a palate cleanser. It's not a bad movie, and look, I enjoy this film. It's a lighthearted, goofy, and at times emotionally resonant, small-scale summer superhero flick. It's not going to win any awards or wow critics, but it's one you can just flip on, sit down, and shut your brain off and just relax to. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Just don't forget about the post-credits scene. As inconsequential as the majority of this film's narrative is, that post-credits scene is extremely important and devastating. And I can't wait to revisit next week's installment because we all know what's coming.